Righty, it's 4:30. We're going to open up this P&Z meeting on March the 3rd. I guess we're going to start with approval of minutes from the January 6, 2022 meeting.
I reviewed and commented to staff, and they made a couple of corrections.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections as presented.
So be it. I'll make that motion.
Motion is second. All in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. All right, this motion passes. So we're going to go to number 2A, which is the final plat, Comanche Trace, Phase 16, Albatross Way. We'll let Drew read this.
The final plat being a 9.66 acre tract of land located in the William Watt Survey number 65, abstract number 364, Kerr County, Texas, being a portion of a called 1,131.78 acre tract of land described in volume 971, page 698 of the real property records, Kerr County. This is a final plat. Helps if I get to the right slide there. Final plat for Comanche Trace. We did review the preliminary plat a few months back. They are currently under construction on roads, water, and sewer. I've gone through some of those inspections. Staff recommends the plat for approval with these conditions. The plat will not be recorded until all conditions have been met. But you need to reference the plat number, complete the addressing table, address any comments related to the survey data, obviously complete the infrastructure installation, note that the parkland dedication fee and how they'll be making that payment either by permit or by plat, and confirm that all easements are identified properly post-construction. As you can see on that inset there, there's also a large sewer line that goes along with this plat. Make sure that sewer line is within that prescribed easement. Any questions?
Is this the second?
Yeah, this is final plat.
The final
Yeah.
plat, okay. I'm pretty familiar with this. I've reviewed it pretty extensively. I have no questions. Does anyone have any questions on this? All right, if there are no questions, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the final plat as presented on Comanche Trace Phase 16 Albatross Way.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
A second.
Second. We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, this motion passes. We're going to move on. 2B's been pulled, correct?
That's right. Kirkendall Estates, this plat has been withdrawn.
So we're going to move on to the public hearing section. The first consideration we have under the public hearing section is a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 213 Palmer Street. Drew?
It's a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for a short-term rental on Lot 19, Block 8, Lowry Edition, more commonly known as 213 Palmer Street. This is, again, a conditional use permit for a short-term rental. Here's a site plan of the property. It's not illustrated here on the survey, but the driveway does extend from obviously the front all the way back to the garage. There's a 3-bedroom house. It looks to me that they do have room for 4 cars in that driveway. Mm-hmm. Obviously, single stacked all the way back, but staff recommends approval with our kind of standard conditions that we've used for short-term rental, the guest notification, the local contact requirement that we've talked about. Occupancy taxes are required as per Chapter 94. Should they choose to put a sign up, follow these requirements. The minimum off-street parking as per the zoning code, maximum occupancy of 10 guests, and of course any other zoning regulations supersede the CUP.
So this does require a public hearing. Before we open the public hearing, were there any, on the notices sent out, were there anyone commenting on this from the neighborhood or within 200 feet?
Don't believe we had any. Double check. No comments have been received.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing on this at 4:34. Is the representative for this CUP on Palmer Street here? Are the owners here?
I believe they live in Corpus, so I don't know if they were intending to
Yeah.
come in or not.
I looked at it, and I mean, I think it is not an issue for the neighborhood. There's a lot of things in the area. My only thought is it's really nice to have someone represent this request so they can be asked questions about how it's gonna be managed and what's gonna be their contact of information and.
Right. As we talked about, we are kind of informally working with the applicants on the follow-up, make sure they've done any improvements that are required. Again, this one shouldn't have any required improvements, but make sure they do get signed up for their occupancy tax payment system, and then, of course, getting some local
I'm gonna
contact
close the public
information.
hearing at 4:35. So all of these things, even if this is approved here, they don't get the occupational license until,
If they're occupied, or if they're, start using it as an Airbnb, actually, I take that back. They actually have used this one as an Airbnb and went to pay their taxes and realized they missed this step, excuse me.
Okay.
It didn't come through as a complaint, just came through as the occupancy tax piece. So they've been operating, and I don't see any complaints that we received. Do you recall if we received any? I don't think so.
anybody have any questions or comments on this?
I can't think of one. Well, number one, do you have the map that shows how many B and Bs in the area?
I don't on this one.
There are several, though.
There are several in this area. Again, this is right at Guadalupe and Lowry Street.
Yeah, I know where exactly where it is. I know we just did the ones over on Water, and there's three closer to Mamacita's or to Wells Fargo up the main street there.
It's a good point. It would be a good idea when we do these to have the map that we can look at where they're all
Right.
dotted into the ones that are permitted and the ones that are grandfathered in.
Right.
I know there's two on Starkey.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two on Starkey.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
two on Lowry, and then further down Guadalupe, there's two or three.
And from a practical standpoint I don't recall, there's always been angle or some other kind of parking. I don't know that we've ever had that you've said that it was okay to do stack 4 vehicles.
The code does allow tandem parking, whether that's short-term rental or residential. You can have single width car, 2 cars deep.
From a practical standpoint, has that happened very often, or
On the residential side, we do see some
with
some
4
homes.
vehicles?
Well, not with 4, but normal residential. We do see quite a few times tandem parking as part of their.
Oh, yeah, with 2.
And with the short-term rental being limited to 10 guests, obviously they're going to
Yeah,
be there together. So if they had to rotate vehicles,
you got 2 different parties and you got, 4 different vehicles,
How many bedrooms are in there, Drew?
3 bedrooms.
it's 3, so, yeah. Well, anyway, no complaints, no whatever, but, anyway.
I mean, I visited the site. I mean, I don't really have an issue with this site, but again, I think it would behoove someone that is requesting a conditional use permit for something that's different than what the property was built for, to have a representative here that can answer questions that we might ask. Because most everyone I've done, someone's been here to talk to us about how they're gonna manage it, who's gonna manage it, who's gonna handle the complaints, which to me are key questions. They're not, I understand they're not in the application process, but for me to make a decision, they're somewhat important. So it would be nice to,
I agree with you.
have someone that we can,
Chew on.
I mean, the biggest issue is really, it always is gonna be if the neighbors complain, who are they gonna complain to and how's it gonna be handled?
Right.
So. Anybody have any comments, any thoughts?
Can we reject it and require the owner or representative to show up?
If it's denied, they have to wait 12 months to come back, or you could just table it till next month.
My recommendation would be to table it till next month. I don't want to deny it, so they have to wait 12 months, but it would be to table it and see if they can have a representative here.
Okay.
I tend to have no issue with it, but again, it's nice to have someone here that can answer those questions. For me, that's my own personal opinion. I would recommend we table it, have you get in touch with them and ask them. It doesn't have to be them if it can be a representative.
Right.
Well, they still are, I mean, they are operating now.
Yes.
Okay. And so there's no, it's not punitive in the sense of economically, but if they do, and I agree with you, Mike, that, just tip of the hat anyway. And so I'm in favor of that.
Are they operating as a grandfathered? Are they operating as,
They'd started operating, I believe, in May.
so they're operating illegally, basically?
And through the fall, they started working with finance on the occupancy
But
taxes.
still, even though they're working on the occupancy tax, they don't, it requires a conditional use permit.
That's why they're here. Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
why
I definitely
we're trying to get
recommend
them through the process.
table this until we can have them here or someone here to
Okay.
represent them. That's my opinion.
You need a motion?
Mhm.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to table for next month, and we have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right. Okay. 3B, conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 713 Harper Road.
It's a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for short-term rental on .84 acres of land out of the Fosgate Survey 120, Abstract 138, more commonly known as 713 Harper Road. Again, this is short-term rental, and this is a two-bedroom house. They do have room in the driveway. Actually, have two driveways. They have room for more than 2 or 3 parking spaces. This is at the corner of Holdsworth and Harper Drive. Behind it, of course, is a church, and then further down Holdsworth Drive, sports
Yeah,
complex,
it's a great location.
and out Harper Road to I-10. And the applicant is here if you'd have any questions.
Well, let's open the public hearing and we'll get into so we'll open the public hearing on Harper Road at 442. Was there any responses to the notices about any issues? And is there anyone here besides the owners that wishes to speak? Okay, if not, we'd love to hear from the owners. Yes, ma'am. Step up to the microphone and tell us who you are.
I'm Eileen Hyde.
You want to drop that down? There you go.
Eileen Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. And your address in town is?
13 Harper Road.
Okay. I mean, I looked at it, I mean, it's a great location, it's got plenty of room, it's got plenty of parking, and I would simply ask you the question that I would have asked the previous applicant. How will you handle the management of it, and if there are complaints or issues, how will that be handled?
At this point, I'm planning on doing it myself, and I've
Okay.
already outlined some, help on that.
Yes, ma'am.
But if I need to, I'll go to a management company.
So do you live there yourself? Or-
Yes, I have 2 homes here.
Okay, so you're going to be on site?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Well, no, I'm not. Not when not when guests are there.
okay.
No.
Are you local?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I agree, that's a good location. It's kind of isolated, and the only comment I would have is, I hope there's directions for people coming in, because I would hate to be southbound and making a left turn into that.
Trying to think of something bright to put out there.
Okay.
Some kind of, some.
You know, I actually thought I would have a problem trying to find it. When I went over there, I did, and it was very easy to
Yeah.
find. Yeah, now, I didn't have to get in and out, like you said, but.
Right.
If there's no one else to speak, I'm gonna close the public hearing at 4:44. And then if anyone has any questions or comments before we consider the motion? Everybody's good with it? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on 3B, short-term rental.
Approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
Sure, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes. All right, we're going to go to 3C, CUP for accessory dwelling unit, 167 Paramount View.
The resolution to allow a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit on Lot 9R, the Heights of Kerrville, more commonly known as 167 Paramount View. This is a request for an accessory dwelling unit. This lot has been replatted. It was 2 lots. They replatted to 1 lot. And there's the overall site plan on the location of the main house and the second house. There's a little tighter site plan showing, of course, we're paramount at that cul-de-sac, the main house and the guest house down to the side there. It is consistent with Kerrville 2050 plan as a conditional use, obviously not changing the base zoning. The accessory dwelling unit will be tied to this site plan, maximum height of 35 feet as per code. It does meet the total floor area of 50% or less than the main house. And of course, minimum parking spaces provided 2 per unit. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before
So
or
I
after.
did not drive over there. The main house is existing, correct?
It is under construction.
Under
Yeah,
construction.
they've pulled their permit and I don't know how far they are, but they've received their permit and have started construction.
I gathered from reading the restrictions, doesn't the main house have to be completed before the guest house can come on site?
So that I'm not sure. The city cannot enforce the deed restrictions.
I understand.
Yeah, so we typically don't review those. We're handling the zoning piece. Obviously, the owner
Right.
has to work with the HOA and comply with those deed restrictions as well.
Okay.
I can speak to that later.
We'll do it in the public hearing, Garrett.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and open this public hearing at 4:46 on this 167 Paramount View. We do have one speaker that signed up to speak. Are the owners here? Are you representing the owners, Garrett?
Representative for the general contractor.
Okay.
Dow Custom Homes.
Well, let's listen to Mr. Jeff Lyon. I think he's a neighbor.
I wrote my comments down. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Jeff Lyon, and my wife and I live at 166 Paramount View in the Heights, just across the street from 167 Paramount View, the applicant's address. If you look at the screen, there's only one house on Paramount View, and that's mine. We're the only residents that live on the entire street of Paramount View. We purchased our lot and built our forever home in the Heights primarily due to its location within the city of Kerrville. We expected to enjoy the services and benefits provided by the city of Kerrville, including its building codes and ordinances. The Heights neighborhood is comprised of 56 residential lots intended for the development of 56 single-family homes. 56 lots, 56 homes. The CC&Rs of the Heights contain strict requirements for the design and construction of each single-family home. However, guest houses are not defined in our CC&Rs. Guest houses only have 2 requirements, and I have them and I can show you in the CC&Rs. 1, the guest house cannot be constructed until after the single-family residence is completed. That's very clear. 2, the guest house must meet City of Kerrville ordinances. That is, you got to play by the rules. If this conditional use permit is approved, the City of Kerrville is essentially allowing for the construction of 2 separate single-family homes on one lot, which goes against the intent and flavor of the Heights Community Development Guidelines. If this conditional use permit is approved, what happens next? Will another homeowner see this and build another 2 separate homes on one lot? The Heights Homeowners Association has a meeting tonight at 6 p.m. and we're going to discuss this very issue. We realize that our CC&Rs are not perfect And they were drawn up by a developer in Dallas that bought this property out of foreclosure. And there's many loopholes. We have plenty of time to address this issue because the applicant's main residence has not even poured a slab yet. The main residence won't be complete for another year. It won't be completed this year at all. And they're prohibited from starting construction on the guest house until after their residence is completed. Those are the rules that we all signed on when we bought our lots. Thank you very much.
You bet, thank you. Well, I noticed in the packet there was a letter from, did I not see a letter from the Heights of Kerrville? This is from the Board of Directors of, your request submitted to the Architectural Committee of the Heights of Kerrville HOA is hereby approved with following conditions. This says the Board of Directors. Is this from the Architectural Review Committee that this letter came from?
Yes, it is. When we speak
Well,
to that.
does the Architectural Review, my question would be more for the gentleman, is, does the Architectural Review Committee have the ability to change the HOA guidelines that you guys signed when you bought your lots there?
No, it has to be voted on by the membership.
Okay. You want to step up, Garrett?
Yeah. Just real quick. My name's Garrett Harmon. I'm the architect on the project. I live at 701 Lee Street here in Kerrville. And this house is a guest house in every sense that a guest house has ever meant to be. It will be for guests. It will not be leased. It's even in the CCRs, the development does not allow for subleasing of guest house. I would like to address quickly the idea that the guest house cannot be built until the main house is completed. I don't think that's quite accurate. In the covenants I have here on 4.7, it says, no guest house shall be constructed prior to the construction of the main residential dwelling. That just means somebody can't build a guest house and live in it while the main house is being built. It doesn't say anything about them being built simultaneously, which is what we're
Can you read that
trying to do.
again? What did you just read?
This is 4.7 of the restrictions under Article 4. It says, no guest home shall be constructed prior to the construction of the main residential dwelling.
How do you interpret from that that means that the guest house can't be used? It appears to say to me pretty plainly that the guest house cannot be constructed until the main house is constructed.
To me, it says it can't be, exactly what it says, it can't be built prior.
Well, I mean, that's semantics, but I tend to think it's the same thing. I'm not understanding how you are coming to the conclusion that when it says that it cannot be constructed prior to the construction of the main house, how else can you interpret that?
Well, it doesn't say that it can't be constructed until after the main house is completed. It doesn't say that either.
Well, it doesn't, but I think my opinion is that's the intent.
My opinion is that it's meant to keep somebody from building a guest house and then living on the property while the main house is being built.
I don't disagree with what you're thinking, but I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, it basically says that the guest house can be constructed until the main house is built, but.
But it doesn't say it can't be simultaneous, is what he's saying. Simultaneous construction.
Well, I
that's
think
what-
it does say
Yes.
that. I think it does say it can't be, if
I
it's.
guess that would be a question for your homeowners
Yeah.
association. If that, if the intent is for the guest house not to be built at all until the main house is completed, or can those things go on simultaneously?
Yeah, I'd like, we're going to present this to all
Sure.
the homeowners tonight. We want to clarify all this.
Absolutely.
Right.
What's the size of this guest house?
It is, Drew, did you pull up that cover sheet? That it's a 2-bedroom guest house over a shop and workout room. So, I mean, it's a
Two-story?
two-story structure.
Two-story?
Yeah, two-story structure altogether. I don't remember the exact numbers.
500 under roof.
2,500 square feet altogether over 2
Including the
floors.
garage.
Yeah, and with the shop and gym underneath and 2 bedrooms.
That sounds like workforce housing to me.
Well,
So
I
Jim-
don't know. It's,
Well, the main house is 9,000.
yeah, the main house is 9,000 square feet.
Yeah, I understand the relationship there.
So,
Okay.
but, anyway, and located on the lot, it's as far away as really practical. It could be from any adjoining lots or the street. In fact, once it's all built, I don't believe you'll even be able to see the guest house from the street. Just because where the main house is located, and it sits down below.
Yeah.
Drew, can you bring up the topo, please?
I do not have a topo on this one.
It's
So-
part of the site plan.
It's
On the site plan? Yeah, sorry.
Bring up that enlarged, there we go. So the finished floor elevation at the guest house is 1913. Finished floor elevation of the main house is 1926. So the guest house is sitting 13 feet lower than the main house. And behind the main house. So honestly, I don't know that you would even be able to see it from either adjoining lot or from the street.
I don't know who answers these questions. I have several questions. My first question is, you said that of all the lots out there, there's no other lot out there that has a second dwelling?
Can I speak to that?
Sure, go ahead.
There's 56 lots, and there's 18 homes now. Approximately half of them are under construction.
Okay.
So we're still a new community. One person came to the city of Kerrville a couple of years ago and got a permit for a guest house that did not require a conditional use permit.
So is the reason why we're talking about this conditional use permit is the kitchen, correct?
That's correct. The zoning code defines a guest house as no kitchen
No kitchen.
facilities. This does include a kitchen, so it would be considered an accessory
So there's no
dwelling.
other
No
guest
other-
houses with kitchens?
None.
Okay. Thank you. I go back, and maybe you can, sir, can answer this question to me. I go back to the letter we've received from your Architectural Review Committee. Is the Architectural Review Committee part of your HOA board, or is it a separate entity?
The Architectural Review Committee is separate from the board.
And their responsibility is just to review and approve all architectural guidelines for construction?
That's correct, and
Where I live.
they were just elected last fall. After 10 years, the first 10 years, all decisions were made by the developer. And now the developer sold all the lots. So now the homeowners are starting to take control of our neighborhood and make decisions. And these three gentlemen on our Architectural Review Committee just started last fall, and this was their first decision-making.
So their responsibility is to approve or disapprove architectural designs and guidelines within the constructions being built. Do they have the authority to approve a conditional use permit request? I mean,
No. And if you look at their approval, it says that they approve structures that comply with local ordinances.
thank you.
So then that kitchen issue and puts it in the,
That's why it's a UP, and I mean, the letter from the Architectural Review Committee really doesn't hold any. It basically approves the design and construction and architectural of the building, but it doesn't address the conditional use permit.
Mike?
Yes, sir?
Public hearing?
Yes, sir?
May I?
You sure can.
Bruce Drakey, 615 Earl Garrett. I understand the concerns of the folks from the Heights. And I really quickly pulled up the restrictions. The one I find are the ones from 2010, prior to the current owner. Well, it wasn't the owner that's now gone, apparently. So I'm looking at the old ones that were originally drawn back in 2010, so I may not be looking at the latest ones. I find consistency with what's being said, but what I'm concerned about, and the reason I'm speaking, is that we're talking about restrictions and deed restrictions, which aren't the preview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is in residential estate. They're here for a CUP, and when they can build it or that's all part of the development and the ACC and all their restrictions. That's
understand.
not the city's business. We need to be, in my opinion, the reason I'm speaking is that we need to be focused on what conditions would the city apply to an accessory dwelling unit in residential estate. And I'm speaking not just to the Heights, but broader, and we look at that zoning code. These are large lots. This is actually a larger lot than originally platted because 2 lots were put together. So what is the issue for the city? And so I'm here concerned about talking about deed restrictions when I'm not sure that's really what we should be concerned with. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you very much.
I understand what you're saying. I'm a little hesitant to grant a conditional use permit that violates what the covenants it would put in. I mean, I understand that is a decision for the HOA.
Right,
That's not a decision for us, but
right. And the decision for the conditional use permit should be based on the zoning code, not the deed restrictions.
Could I offer an anecdotal aside here, just
Sure,
kind of to put
sure.
on record? I'm Denby King with Dow Custom Homes, we're the builder on record. That letter from the Architectural Review Board was passed on to us by the HOA president, who is also, if you pull back up the plat from the, it barely touches, but this is his property, right here, 153.
No, it's not.
And he's got, I'm sorry, not 153, he's right next to it, right here, the home that's almost under completed construction. So he's technically not within the notification area, but he's on the same street. And just as an aside, he's the one that gave us the email with the approval, and his email said, "Welcome to the community. Happy to have your home as part of the Heights." So he's aware.
anything else, Garrett?
No, not unless you have any other questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
Well, I guess I have a comment. I don't know that it's a question related to what Garrett was reading in the section 4, I think you said, and we were talking about a minute ago. Be the devil's advocate. Could I go out and build a guest house and work on a main house and quite honestly never finish the main house?
I think that's a concern that is a valid concern, and that's why I would say that it was probably addressed.
Yeah. That's something the HOA, I think, needs to tune into, because that's a distinct possibility, in my opinion.
Well, they have time periods for houses that have to be finished through constructions, so.
and size.
Yeah.
You got a size requirement.
My comment,
Mr. Boucher's talking about time period for the building permit, that it has to be completed.
Okay.
That doesn't, again, has nothing to do with the HOA and the
Right.
deed restrictions. But the permit would be under the building official and his purview to make sure it's built in a timely manner and continued construction. The permit has already been issued for the home. They've already started construction. And they have up to 2 years to finish the CUP building permit. So even if they pulled the guest house permit in a year from now, they would still follow the zoning code and building codes and so on.
So my question for you is, we're talking about kind of what Bruce said, but if this was approved, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this was approved under the zoning code out there, we wouldn't be here. They wouldn't need a conditional use permit to build that guest house.
It is part of the zoning code, and they are allowed to apply for a conditional use permit. So
Well, that's what I'm saying, but why do they need a conditional use permit?
for the accessory dwelling unit,
Why?
as defined by the zoning code.
Okay, so we are dealing with the zoning code. We're not dealing with CCNRs. We're not dealing with HOAs. We're dealing with the zoning code. It requires a conditional use permit
Correct.
for them to put the accessory building there. And the only reason why the HOA is interested is because they want to put a kitchen in. Is that correct?
Other way around.
Not exactly.
Okay, then explain it to me again.
The zoning is, R1, not
Residential estates, RE.
RE.
Yeah.
RE has any accessory dwelling, meaning it has a kitchen, as a conditional use. R1A is a zoning classification, the only zoning classification that allows an accessory dwelling by right.
Okay.
So it comes down to, is it accessory dwelling or accessory structure? The fact that it has a kitchen in it makes it accessory dwelling. If it did not have the kitchen in it, then
Would be a guest house.
it would be a guest house. It would be an accessory structure. If it didn't have the kitchen in it, again, it would be classified as accessory structure, but because it's over 1,000 square feet, still would require conditional use?
No, it would not. It would be an accessory structure defined in the zoning code as a guest house without the kitchen.
That's
Yes.
my point.
Adding the kitchen under the zoning code moves it
Requires
up
a
to an
conditional
accessory dwelling unit, which requires a conditional use permit.
I mean, my inclination is, and I agree with Mr. Lyons, is what's a little time? They're meeting, the HOA is meeting on this to discuss what their options are, maybe what their response is. I don't see why this can't be, again, deferred to give them an opportunity to meet, talk this over, maybe actually meet with, Garrett, have you met with the HOA up to this point?
I have not, no.
Would it be worth you, I'm just inclined to give them the opportunity because it is not, the kitchen adds the element that I guess requires the additional consideration.
Go ahead.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Just to ask the
Sorry,
question. what
step
would-
up to the mic so we can keep it a record.
If we were to table it today, what does that do to the timeline of?
30 days.
30 days.
Yeah.
We are beginning to build the building pad on the main home in the next 2 weeks. And
Okay.
so pushing this off would put an undue cost associated with the crew that is building the building pad for the main home, who could then move directly into the guest house along with the concrete pour that would happen. So
Well, I
there
mean,
would be,
to me, that brings up another issue. I look at their guidelines out there, and basically what it says is you're not allowed to build a guest house until the main house is built. I mean, that's a legal issue.
you approving it
it's not
today
a-
does not prohibit them from then denying it, correct?
Correct. But that's not a zoning issue.
Right.
That is a civil matter between the
Exactly
neighbors.
right.
And the zoning code actually gives plenty of time for them to figure that out, because they have up to 2 years before the CUP would expire, if they haven't commenced construction.
Should we not be able to flow into the construction of the guest house at this time, it would add significant additional cost by just the remobilization of crews that are currently scheduled to perform that construction.
I understand your point, but that really that's the property owner's issue. It's really not
And
my
it sounds like
issue.
it could be denied by the HOA alongside your approval though, correct? They're two separate things, are they?
Yeah, they do not relate.
I don't know that once we approve this CUP, the HOA can do anything, they can protest, but I think it's after the fact.
It's a civil matter and
Sure.
they're not necessarily related.
HOA has already approved the entire project.
Again, when we went back to the owner and the HOA and asked for a more defined approval letter for this very reason to kind of skirt this confusion, they just reasserted the approval letter that they gave for the blanket approval on the project.
I haven't seen that letter.
That's the one that you read off
That
of?
letter right there comes from the Architectural Review Committee, just says they approve.
Well, again, that was passed on to us by the HOA president. That's what he gave us.
That's probably fine, but
I could print the email where he had a paragraph welcoming her to the committee and passing it on.
anybody else have any, thank you guys. Anybody else have any comments on this?
Let Mike address this, perhaps.
Yes, sir.
No, please, Councilman.
Finally, somebody that knows what they're doing.
No, well, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, let's not go with it.
I'm not going to admit to that. I get that there's confusion. Truly, one of the best parts of my job is when these conditions and restrictions and covenants come up. I get to say, I don't get into that. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to give an opinion about it. Y'all's, and I know it's a confusing issue, right? Because it all has to do with the development and the construction of that home and the accessory dwelling unit. But we don't get into the CCR stuff at all. And someone said it, you're exactly right, that you could issue or approve this CUP, which again is advisory, and then it has to go to council, right? But you all could take that action, and lo and behold, in the next few weeks or whatever, they get shut down by the HOA, or, there's a dispute that goes between the HOA and the homeowner. But that's not here, that's not for you all. Y'all's purview is whether this is an appropriate use of this residential estate lot to allow this accessory dwelling unit. That's it.
Well, I guess under those circumstances, Mike, you're saying we have two options. We can either deny it or approve it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, you're looking at it, is it an appropriate use for this RE lot?
So it's not in our preview to table this till the next meeting?
That would not be my recommendation. Because I don't think you would table it for any more additional information for whether it's an appropriate use or not. Now, something could, occur between the HOA and the property owner, but again, that's not relevant to y'all's review.
Mr. Lyons, when did you guys find out about this? When were you given notice about this accessory building?
The letter.
December the 30th?
Yeah, and if I could just say a couple more.
Sure.
My wife and I are not trying to cause trouble. It's that we bought this property and built this house based on the belief that the CC&Rs were going to be followed. And then we also bought this property and built our house based on the belief that the city of Kerrville ordinances were going to be followed, the rules. Now, the gentleman here from the home builder says he talked to the president of the HOA. The president of the HOA came over to my house yesterday, and he says he doesn't like this situation either. So we can argue left and right who's right on that side of the board. And the ARC guys, I know all three of them. Not one of them is in view of this house. Not one. I can tell you their names and addresses, but it doesn't matter. So the only persons that are impacted right now, because we're the only ones out there, is my wife and myself. And we just wanted everybody to follow the rules, whether they're CC&Rs or city ordinances. That's all we wanted. That's all we ask.
And going through this process, this would be following the zoning code. So,
Again,
going through this conditional use permit process is compliant with the zoning ordinances and codes within the city.
So,
Are we still in the public hearing? Can I make one
Yes,
more
we are,
comment?
Garrett.
You know, and, you know, as an architect, I see both sides of the issue. Being a former planning and zoning commissioner, I see both sides of the issue. You're trying to protect your property. The covenants are trying to help you do that. The downside of a guest house being used as something other than a guest house, I think is what those covenants are trying to protect the homeowner with.
I agree.
And so again, that's the HOA's responsibility to cover that.
And they
have-
can, and they absolutely can.
and they have up to this point. And nobody's trying to break any rules. Nobody's trying to get away with something that they shouldn't. We're following the rules. This meeting is part of that. And in the end, when or if this house, this guest house was approved and built, it would have zero effect on your property, because once the main house is built, you wouldn't be able to see it. Everything else associated besides the sight lines, how it gets used, all of that falls under the homeowners association's
Right, the HOA.
responsibility. And so the impact that this has on not only your property, any of the other neighbors' property is minimal, if not zero. Because rules are being followed, plans are being submitted, discussions are being had. All of that is going on. We're not trying to put any other burden on anybody else, because they're a property owner too, and they want their rights protected just as much.
Got you. Mr. Lyons, I understand what you're saying. I'm a big proponent of not granting CUPs when they open up the opportunity for, someone else to come up, because once you grant one CUP, even though everyone is an individual case, it's very tough to turn somebody down. But by the same token, our city attorney has given us some pretty good advice, and we're only to consider the zoning. And I think I live in a community that has CCNRs and has an HOA, and the HOA controls, we face the same thing you have as far as someone buying a home there and then wanting to rent it out, and it's pretty restrictive in our HOAs, what you can and can't do, and we're protected, and I would hope that your HOA guidelines would do the same thing. My inclination is that I'm not happy about having to give a CUP for someone violating the CCNRs, but like Mr. Hayes said, we can't consider that. We have to deal, and you are gonna have a meeting with your HOA, and I would assume that whatever comes out of that, you guys, if and when this is built, HOA is probably gonna keep pretty good, kind of watch on, what's being done there, and hopefully the neighbors will be good neighbors. I mean, they're building a 9,000 square foot home in your community, so, so I think this falls under one of the situations where I have to agree to something that I don't really agree with, but I think it's what we can do. Although I would say that there's a little bit difference of opinion between what you said, the HOA said, and what Mr. Lyons said. So maybe not being quite so forthright is not the right idea when you come up here in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I could enter the email into a record if we need that.
I'm not gonna get into that, but any other comments?
No, I share your comments.
David, any wisdom?
well, it's just, again, like we've indicated, it sets precedent anytime you do this. And then it also sets, HOA has a responsibility when they make whatever decision they make, that it will set a precedent going forward. And again, I concur with you. We're doing a great deal of agony to get to this point where we have a real zoning code, and I think we need to follow Mike's direction on this and go forward with what we have under our jurisdiction.
If there's no one else to speak, I will close the public hearing. So I'm gonna close the public hearing on this one at 5:20 and just make one other comment. I've known Garrett for a long time. He served on the planning and zoning. He served as the chairman of the planning and zoning. He's a man of great integrity, and I think that what he says is probably the situation we have here. They're trying to do something for themselves. They're not trying to infringe on anybody else's property, and hopefully the HOA can move forward and deal with it. But I appreciate everyone's thoughts here. I guess it's time to make a decision on this. Entertain a motion on this conditional use permit for the accessory building.
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a motion to second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Mr. Lyon, I wish you luck, and hopefully your HOA does what they're supposed to do and manages the project.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're learning.
All right. We are moving on to, I guess we're moving on to 3D. Zoning change R1 to C2. Drew?
This is an ordinance change from zoning from R1 Single Family Residential District to C2 Light Commercial District on 1.05 acres of land out of the Cage Survey 116, Abstract 106, Kerr County, Texas, more commonly known as 601 Roy Street. Applicant is here if you have any questions. There was a single family home here that has since been removed. It's a vacant lot now. As you can see on the zoning map, it's the only R1 lot in this area. To the northwest is R3. To the northeast is C2 and C3. The southeast is C3, and to the southwest is C2. So the request for C2 is consistent both with the land use plan and the adjacent zoning of the properties. Staff recommends the case for approval. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Let's open the public hearing on this. We'll have this public hearing at 5:22 on the zoning change. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in the public hearing? So if there's no one wishing to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing. Anybody have any questions? The owners are here? Yes, ma'am? Is there anyone here that has any questions for the owners?
What are the plans? Why are we going from a R1 to a C2?
State your name, ma'am.
My name is Adrienne Blunt. I live 4750 Fredericksburg Road, Kerrville.
Okay.
We're going to sell it, and we think this is the most appropriate use of the lot. The house that was there was fallen down, and so we removed it, and would like, my sister and I own it together, and would like to sell it.
Okay. Anybody else? I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me that this is probably a good move on this property.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments before we? All right, I'll consider a motion on this zoning change 3D from R1 to C2, 601 Roy Street.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve, a second. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, raise your hands. This motion is approved. Thank you, ma'am. All right. 3E, zoning change C2 to C3, 534 Industrial Park Subdivision.
It's an ordinance to change the zoning from C2 Light Commercial District to C3 General Commercial District on 17.803 acres of land out of the Sam L. Wallace Survey number 112, Abstract 360, Kerr County. Generally located at the northeast corner of Loop 534 and Landfill Road. I believe in January we looked at the preliminary plat for this property. Again, here's the zoning. To the north you have C2. Across the loop, you have C3 and mixed use. To the south is a small strip of ag-zoned property, and then immediately adjacent to that is the city landfill, wastewater treatment plant, and the city farm. is consistent with the Kerrville 2050 plan as part of the catalyst area for this area. Again, kind of down the loop from the high school and middle school, and kind of that corridor along the loop. So be pleased to answer any questions before or after public hearing on this one.
We have no one signed up to speak on this, but we'll open the public hearing at 5:25 on 3E. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Right, so I'm gonna close the public hearing at 5:25.
I guess I have a question. Can you give us any indication as to the site in Lot 8? Driving by there, there's a lot of trees and
There are.
little ground and.
Both this property and the adjacent property. My mouse is not working. The adjacent property north have done some clearing, particularly on the frontage. Obviously, as you look further back, the property to the north is a little heavier wooded than this property is.
Okay.
But you can see kind of there's an old clearing out there. I'm not sure if that was just moving dirt around or what the plan was on it, as you can see on the aerial. I believe I do have, just a second. There's the portion of the plat, they've actually been working on revising the plat based on the comments from the preliminary plat. So it will have a cul-de-sac coming in with an easement to allow for a future road if needed, going north back to the loop. They've kind of amended their detention pond as they've gotten further into their drainage analysis and floodplain study.
So we're changing all this to C3?
Yes.
That's the request?
Yeah, if you recall, the engineer, Mr. Cantu, and Mr.
Yes.
Hamilton both
Do.
kind of alluded to some of the potential projects on this one. One of them being the next case. But most of those, in further discussions, most of those would be required C3. Not all of them, but Mr. Hamilton felt it was better just to go ahead and go rezone the entire property and keep moving forward with this project, rather than have each tenant come in individually.
I agree.
So,
That's a good idea.
Are there any questions?
too far.
The owners are here, did you say?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. It's an improvement over the landfill area, so. If no one has any further questions or comments, then we'll entertain an ordinance for 3E to change the zoning from C2 to C3.
I'll make that motion.
You have a motion?
Second.
You have a second? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All right, 3E will pass with zoning change from C2 to C3. Now we'll move on to 3F, CUP for automotive service and repair. So this is Lot 8 into this project, correct?
Correct. This is a resolution to allow a conditional use permit for automobile sales and service repair major on parts of the Lot 8 of the 534 Industrial Park subdivision. Tract of land containing approximately 3 acres out of the 17.8 acres out of the Sam L. Wallace Survey number 112, abstract 360, Kerr County, Texas. Again, located along northeast corner of Loop 534 and Landfill Road. The zoning code under C3 allows for automobile service and repair, both minor and major in the C3 zoning district. However, any of those automotive uses located within 500 feet of the floodplain requires a conditional use permit. So once they finish their flood study, this lot is, I can't quite see that, about 111 feet, I think is the closest point on the 100-year flood zone. This use is required to have all work done indoors, no outside storage of materials and equipment. Obviously, vehicles can be parked outside, but all the parts and accessories, et cetera, be stored indoors. There's kind of a preliminary site plan just showing the location of the shop. Obviously, a large enough shop to kind of work with their needs. It's an existing business moving to Kerrville, so they've kind of been through this setup at least once before. Given the fact that it's all indoors, they're not proposing anything against those regulations. I don't think there's any direct threat to the flood zone based on this development. Of course, the main drainage will go to the detention pond for the development. This site itself may have some, again, consistent with natural conditions, may have some drainage that goes directly to the floodplain across the adjacent property, but again, they can't increase the impact or velocity or volume based on the current conditions, so. Staff
Because
recommends.
everything's being done inside, there'll be nothing that would drain off of that site that would be environmentally sensitive.
Right. Or at least very limited, no more than any other parking lot, I guess would be the easiest way to explain that.
So the drainage is city sewer?
No, excuse me, the stormwater drainage.
Okay. Just the stormwater?
Just the stormwater, yeah. No, it'll be tied on to water and sewer.
Yeah, right, okay.
Sorry, yes. They will not have a septic system. It'll be city services.
So this requires a public hearing, which we will open at 5:30. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this issue? If not, I'll close the public hearing at 5:31.
Well, as to the drainage issue, the building has 4 entrances on each side, which requires some, for the vehicles,
Right.
which requires some additional hard surface, I would
Yes.
assume.
Yes. Yeah, so once
So
they
there's quite
go
a,
through their drainage analysis on the project.
okay, that's all been taken into account? Because that's a
It
lot of
hasn't at this time,
stormwater
but yeah.
drainage area.
Right. It will be. It has not at this time.
That will be under the development.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's standard development and
okay.
state law drainage rules, et cetera.
The other concern I have, I mean, if you Google the Fritztown Off-Road Builders, it's currently located in Stonewall,
Mhm.
and they do automobile lift
Correct.
installations. I would imagine such fabrication may require welding and painting. I mean, we got hazards possible.
I don't know how much body work they do.
Well, I was thinking a chassis. You may
Right.
have to do some welding on the frame.
Possibly. Again, that would be consistent with that major automotive
Yeah,
repair.
Right,
that's
right.
gonna be something that will be taken care of and this is just a conditional use permit.
Right, and really, because it's adjacency to the floodplain,
Yeah,
if there was no floodplain here, they'd be allowed by right.
Right.
So,
okay.
minimal concerns on this
Minimal
one.
concern. All right.
Spoke with city engineer and again, kind of the general drainage rules and the way this entire project, not just this one lot, has incorporated their retention.
Mhm.
Didn't see any additional concerns.
Any questions?
Just for a learning, for the orientation, if this is a structure,
Yes,
okay, is it face the loop or face the interior, the developer street?
I believe they were gonna have kind of the office area face the loop as far as the building. If they have any access points, it'll go through TxDOT, to get an access off of the loop.
But the concept is when you have an industrial park, a development like that, your access is off over
Right.
Interior streets.
this interior
Yeah.
spine street or whatever.
I would anticipate that's what they're going for. I can't guarantee that TxDOT would not allow another curb cut, but I think their default is within 400 feet, so certainly wouldn't be close enough to have direct impact on that intersection.
Yeah, and I'm like David, they're gonna asphalt the whole
Yeah.
thing, and so, yeah, it's gotta, but that will be taken under consideration beyond our scope.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody have any other questions?
I do.
Yes,
One
sir.
question, and just thinking back military times, hazmat, off-road shops, differentials, transmissions, anything like that, you can't store it inside. You've got to have it outside in a contained area with a berm. That close to the floodplain, it just makes me think just a little bit, and it probably really doesn't have anything to do with planning and zoning, but thinking outside of that, if there was something that happens, I mean, if you spill transmission fluid out there and it runs off into,
Right.
the flood zone. Just
And
a thought of how they're going to do that, how they're going to contain that, or if they have a contingency plan with that.
The other provisions for these types of uses is all work and all storage is required to be indoors. So they will have to work with fire marshal if they're storing those materials inside. Really the berming and containment of that really wouldn't be an issue because it shouldn't be stored outside. So if they do have excess material that they need to store, they're gonna have to move it off-site or
Gonna have to be,
dispose of it.
I mean, in today's world, a lot of that stuff, someone, safety cleaner, someone comes by once a week and takes all your fluids and everything. I understand what you're saying, and that would be my biggest concern. But again, that's gonna be under, the city, the development services as they come in to get plans approved and all that type of stuff. This is just approving general use. I agree with you. I mean,
Right.
those types of shops are a nightmare.
A lot of different things going on for sure.
In layman's terms, what we're saying is that's not our problem, that's Drew's problem.
Exactly, so.
Below our pay grade.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, if we don't have any other comments, I'll entertain a motion on the CUP for the automotive service and repair.
So move.
We have a motion to approve, we have a second?
I'll second.
Whichever one, yeah.
All right, we have a motion to approve, we have a second. All in favor of 3F, raise your hand. All right, this motion for the CUP has been approved. 3G, annexation of 318 May Drive.
An ordinance to annex into the city of Kerrville's incorporated limits with the zoning classification of R2, medium density residential. The following parcel, Lot 8, Block 1, Valley View, more commonly known as 318 May Drive. This property is, again, adjacent to the city limits. The owners have requested to be brought into the city limits. They did have to tie on to city sewer based on the wastewater situation they were under. They had city sewer before. Since they were outside of the city limits, they were not permitted to have that sewer, that city service. They are requesting annexation and have to be brought into the city limits. And there, again, there's an existing sewer line right out front. The owners are here if you have any questions. Staff recommends the case with the R2 zoning, which is the zoning for adjacent properties. We're looking at that top corner of May Drive. Maybe I can get the mouse there. You can see that red dot right there. So the adjacent properties down May Drive are all zoned, or majority of them are zoned R2.
Well, we don't have anyone signed up to speak on this, but I'm gonna open the public hearing at 5:37 on annexation of 318 May Drive. Anyone, are you with the owners? Did you have any questions, or do you need anything to say? All right, then I'm gonna close the public hearing, 5:37. Anybody have any questions or comments for the owners before we move forward?
I was curious, what is the size of this parcel?
Yeah, I think it's a little less than an acre.
A little less than an acre.
That's just to kind of give you scale from the property line to that dashed line is 200 feet.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a little larger than some of your standard residential lots, but again, that was the original plat for this area. It's a portion of that Lot 8.
You guys sure you wanna be in the city, huh? Anybody else have any questions or issues? Staff recommends approval of this. Entertain a motion on the annexation.
I'll make the motion, Mike.
We have a motion. Can we get a second on that? We have a motion, a second. All in favor of annexation of 318 May, please raise your hand. All right, this motion is approved.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good luck. It still needs to go before city council, but I'm sure that you're not gonna have any issues.
Thank you.
Good.
Couple things for you guys. We missed it in February because of the ice storm, but we have the election of chair and vice chair. You want me to run that, or do you want to take it?
You run it.
Any volunteers, nominations?
I nominate Mike. For
Yeah, for what?
head man. Chairman.
Okay,
I would second that.
you accept?
I accept.
Any other nominations?
David Lipscomb, Vice Chair.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
Should close the nominations.
What kind of railroad
So
are you
the-
running?
I mean, I'm in agreement with everything, but we have, what is our, how, can we keep David? You're allowed to keep David?
David's term on the board has expired.
I understand that. but-
He has been willing to serve until replaced. Once you've served your term, you have to sit off the board for 1 year before you can be reappointed. So I say that in short, he's willing to stay as long as council has not replaced him,
Oh, good.
but we do not get to just voluntarily keep him.
Gotcha. All right.
You have anybody in consideration?
I've had a couple folks mention that they're interested in, but I don't believe city secretary has received any more applications. So, still pending some more applications. So if you do have anyone in mind, put a bug in their ear and,
I'm just gonna stretch it out as long as we can.
or you can go that route too. And we certainly appreciate David's time.
Yes, we do.
Like that,
Um,
and Joyce,
so, we have a vote on chair and vice chair, are we good?
I'm good.
acclamation.
That'll work. Just wanted to kind of update you guys and general public. Bruce, I guess that's you left. We
You
have
represent the general public, Bruce.
we've made a couple adjustments to the schedule. It is posted online already. If you can see on the the April P and Z agenda, those items will go to council in late May and June instead. Due to the timing of the election and call of those council members and swearing in and so on. Wanted to kind of stay out of those agendas, so we bumped those out 2 weeks. And then the May 12th, the May P and Z meeting, we moved back a week for that same reason. So it'll be May 12th instead. So not to throw your guys' calendar off too much. Obviously, the council dates won't affect you guys as the board, but that May meeting, we did move to May 12th.
Is this something you can send out to us?
I certainly can.
Would you send that, please?
That'd be great.
I'll send the PDF and I'll also send the link to the website
Great.
if you need to share it.
Good.
And then other than that, our next meeting is April 7th. Deadline is tomorrow. Steve, we have 5 cases? Maybe? Working on 6 cases.
Where are we with our addition to the zoning code regarding the posting of signs on properties that require public hearings?
Council's gonna look at that again on the 8th, next week.
Is there something council's not grasping
They've
that we need to educate them on?
They've had a couple different, I'll say, minor amendments and discussions on some of the items. The posting of the property is not one they've contested at all. They're all in agreement on that. Made some minor changes to that section that we were gonna remove for the use of one property to an adjacent property. We're actually gonna keep one sentence of that within the code just to make it crystal clear for the general public that what you cannot do. We reworded a little bit of the RV section for the intent of clarity. Really haven't made any substantial changes. Remember what else? You weren't in that conversation yet, were you?
I started 3 weeks ago, so I don't know.
I thought you were one of those other meetings.
Sidewalks and PRC.
No, sidewalks weren't part of it. I think that was it.
Okay.
But there was quite a bit of dialogue and not a lot of precise drafting. So Mr. Hayes and I sat down and kind of re-outlined that draft, taking it back to council for first reading again, since it's been some time between first and second. They'll go back to first reading and on the 8th, second reading on the 22nd. And then the other one still hanging is the fence discussion that we had. That was gonna be as a
Our
separate,
little sign ordinances, our little sign posting is in with all this other stuff. That's
Right,
what we're
yeah.
not able to-
yeah, so that'll come into effect, I guess, for the May meeting. So, I've got to call the streets department back and see what they can make us.
Okay.
So, again, we gotta talk about that residential size, governmental signs.
It may be a little bit bigger, but not much.
Yeah, there is a section in the sign code that specifically addresses governmental signs. We're just gonna stick with those rules and maybe not too obnoxious to get people's attention, but definitely allow the public that notice, so.
Pretty Venn diagram.
If there
Anything
is
else?
nothing else, is that it?
Wait,
Wait.
we did the identification of the unknown guy on the back row there.
Thank you,
Oh, that's
sir.
our new assistant city manager there.
Well, I.
This is Michael Hornis, our assistant city, one of our assistant city managers. I'll let you take it from there.
Good evening, y'all. This is kind of a odd thing to be at a P and Z meeting and not running the P and Z meeting. So I'm unaccustomed to sitting in the back and keeping my mouth shut because at Live Oak, where I came from, I had to run all the P and Z meetings. So
That had to be fun.
no, I'm overjoyed about what's happening now, and this will be short and sweet. So I'm excited to be here, and I've worked with Drew in the past, many years ago, in Lubbock, and so I'm excited about the prospects and the amount of hard work and dedication that all the boards have put into a thoughtful product in almost in every light that I've seen so far. Not the least of which is the subdivision code and the zoning code, and so it's a thankless task. Sometimes you have to make the best worst decision, and listening to your attorneys is always good advice. So I'm happy to reiterate listening to your attorneys in the future.
Absolutely.
But anyway,
Thank you.
I'm excited to be
We're
here.
happy to have you
Yeah,
here.
welcome
Appreciate-
aboard.
Appreciate
Thank you for having
you
us.
coming on board. Lot going on in Kerrville.
Yeah. All right.
See, next time I can let you present some cases too if you want. I guess other updates, code review committee took a look at sidewalk and right-of-way ordinance. Now that's back in Mr. Hayes's desk. Right-of-way management's not a chapter that we've had. We've managed it through other bits and pieces, so trying to get that kind of centralized in one chapter. This month, they're gonna look at a kind of a start at dark sky and tree preservation guidelines. It will not be requirements, but just guidelines. But that way we can, when we get asked, we can have a consistent document that we can hand off to our customers. Other than that, code review committee is staying busy on reviewing and drafting new stuff.
Thanks, sir.
So we'll present that to you guys
Oh,
as they come through. Right-of-way ordinance may not come here, but the guidelines, we will, at least just for acknowledgement. So,
All right. Subject to thanking Bruce for being here and always giving us good insight.
Well, thank you for your service.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, sir.